The vast expanse of the Council Nexus was a sight to behold. A shimmering structure suspended in space, built by alien hands, yet somehow a monument to human endurance. Captain Rhea Munoz stood before the grand table, her back straight, the weight of Earth's history pressing down on her shoulders. The room buzzed with the faint hum of alien technology, but there was an eerie silence that accompanied the start of the summit. This was a gathering like no other, where every word, every gesture carried the weight of millennia of galactic diplomacy. The galaxy had long since passed judgment on humanity. Polite, respectful, docile, these were the words often used to describe Earth's place among the stars. Humanity, having just recently joined the interstellar community, had learned quickly that survival depended on one thing: the ability to submit, to be polite, to avoid ruffling the feathers of those far more advanced. This polite mode had become second nature to them. The few humans who had ventured beyond Earth's borders knew it well. Rhea, however, was different. She had fought in Earth's first interstellar war, had commanded fleets against alien forces, and had lived through the hardships of forging a place in this new galactic order. Yet, here she was, standing before the galaxy's most powerful species, playing the part of the humble diplomat. She wasn't sure how much longer she could hold on to this pretense. "The summit is called to order," came the voice of High Counselor Xaran, a species with translucent skin, their bones visible like delicate spiderwebs beneath their surface. He was the leader of the Sci-Fi race, an ancient species, who had ruled vast sectors of space for millennia. His voice was calm, but his eyes were cold, assessing. "We are here to discuss the future of human integration into the Galactic Alliance." Rhea nodded, her gaze flicking to the other representatives seated around the massive circular table. There was Terra, the emissary of the Xaran, an insected species, who communicated with a series of clicks and pheromones. Next to her was Archon K'lothar, the supreme leader of the Xaran Empire, a race known for their brutal, expansionist ways. His eyes glinted with superiority as he examined Rhea from across the table. He was the one she had to worry about. "I trust humanity's intentions are in alignment with the agreed-upon protocols?" K'lothar's voice cut through the silence, smooth and unyielding. Rhea met his gaze, holding her ground. "Of course. Earth is committed to peaceful coexistence and galactic cooperation." The words were rehearsed, practiced for years. They had been drilled into every human representative's mind since the first meeting. But today, something in Rhea's chest felt different. The weight of the eyes upon her, the soft whispers of the council members, the subtle disdain in K'lothar's expression, it all made her feel like a child again, a species begging for permission to sit at the table. "You've been compliant long enough," K'lothar continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "But one has to wonder, what value does Earth bring to the table? You have no advanced technologies to rival ours, no resources of significant worth. Your history is one of conflict and struggle." He let the words hang in the air like a thick fog. "And yet, here you are, playing nice, pretending to belong." The room tensed. Rhea felt her pulse quicken, but she held her composure. "We've fought to get here," she said, her voice steady but firm. "We've endured wars, plagues, poverty, and still we stand. That's our value, our resilience, our spirit." K'lothar chuckled darkly, the sound echoing in the hollow space. "Spirit? I'm afraid your spirit will do little against the forces that govern the galaxy. You are simply a pawn in a much larger game." The sting of his words cut deeper than she cared to admit. But Rhea's thoughts flickered back to Earth, to the millions who had fought for this moment, the generations who had given everything for humanity to be more than just a footnote in galactic history. And she knew, there was more to humanity than their polite mode. "I disagree," Rhea said, her voice growing more resolute. "Our spirit is not some intangible thing. It is what has gotten us this far. It is what will allow us to thrive in the future. She paused, looking around the table. We've been polite long enough. But don't mistake politeness for weakness. K'lothar eyes narrowed. Is that a threat, Captain Munoz? Hardly, Rhea replied, her lips curving into a thin smile. It's a promise. We will not be dictated to forever. The room fell into silence. Even then seemed taken aback by Rhea's shift in tone. The hum of the council nexus grew louder, as if the very structure of the station could feel the tension rising. You should be careful with your words, K'lothar warned, his voice cold. The galaxy has a way of punishing those who speak out of turn. You are guests here, not rulers. Guests, Rhea muttered under her breath, though loud enough for everyone to hear. Yes, but even guests have their dignity. There was a long pause. The council members exchanged glances, each calculating how far they could push the humans before things became unpredictable. Then cleared his throat, drawing the focus back to the summit. Captain Munoz, if you would continue, he said, though his tone now seemed somewhat strained. Rhea's mind was racing, but she quickly regained her composure. Of course, she said, her voice calm once more, slipping back into the role of the diplomat. We propose expanding Earth's role in resource sharing and establishing joint research programs on technological advancements. We believe humanity can contribute to the greater good, particularly in sectors like ecological sustainability and conflict resolution. She continued, but her mind was elsewhere. She could feel it, the anger, the frustration, the helplessness that had been building for years. Humanity's polite mode had kept them in check for far too long. The galaxy had seen them as nothing more than a polite species to be used and discarded. But Rhea knew better. She had seen humanity's potential, felt it pulse in the hearts of every soldier, scientist, and citizen back home. She finished her speech with a final, defiant statement. Humanity's time has come. We will not remain silent, and we will not bow. As she finished, a tense silence filled the room. The other representatives exchanged looks, but K'lothar remained still, his eyes burning with a mixture of contempt and curiosity. Rhea could feel the walls closing in, but she didn't flinch. In that moment, something inside her changed. She was done playing their game. The polite mode had its time. Now it was humanity's turn to stand up. And they would stand tall. The tension in the council nexus was palpable, a thick layer of anticipation hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. Rhea Munoz stood still, the weight of her own words still echoing in her mind. Humanity's polite mode had been officially turned off, and though the room had fallen into an uneasy silence, the real battle was only just beginning. K'lothar's gaze never wavered. His smirk was gone now, replaced by a hard, almost imperceptible glint of malice. The weight of his stare was almost tangible, and Rhea could feel the subtle shift in the atmosphere as his presence became more oppressive. The Xaran Empire had ruled with an iron fist for centuries. They didn't tolerate defiance, especially from a species like humanity, one they had deemed weak and insignificant. Politeness is a tool, K'lothar said, his voice slow and deliberate, as though savoring the moment. It is what separates the civilized from the savage. You may speak of spirit and resilience, but in the end, it is power that matters. A polite species can only go so far before it is consumed by the greater forces of the galaxy. Rhea's jaw clenched, but she kept her expression neutral. Perhaps, she said, her voice steady, but strength is not always measured by brute force. Sometimes, it is measured by the willingness to face what others fear to confront. Her words were quiet, but the impact was immediate. The other council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their eyes flicking back and forth between her and K'lothar. The Xaran emissary, Stera, clicked her mandibles nervously, while Xaran, the Sci-Fi leader, leaned forward, his translucent skin shimmering slightly in the dim light. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. K'lothar's lips curled into a tight, almost predatory smile. "You are bold, Captain Munoz. But let us see if your species can truly back up such words. The galaxy is not a place for idealistic fantasies." He rose from his seat with a fluid, predatory grace. His tall, imposing figure seemed to grow larger as he stepped forward, casting a long shadow across the table. "Perhaps we should put your humanity to the test. I propose a challenge, one that will determine once and for all if your species is truly as resilient as you claim." Rhea's stomach tightened. She had expected this. K'lothar had never been one for diplomacy. For him, there was always an ulterior motive. But now, with her words hanging in the air, she couldn't afford to back down. "What kind of challenge?" she asked, keeping her voice even, despite the growing tension in her chest. K'lothar turned his piercing gaze toward her, the challenge in his eyes unmistakable. "A test of your people's resolve. A trial by force. We will put your best assets on the line, and if humanity's spirit is as strong as you say, you will emerge victorious. But if you fail, Earth will relinquish its claim to any meaningful role in the galactic order." The room went silent. No one dared speak. Rhea felt every eye on her, every heartbeat drumming in her ears. This was not what she had expected. This wasn't a diplomatic test. This was an outright challenge, a battle, not just of military strength, but of humanity's very right to stand among the stars. "I accept," she said, without hesitation. Her voice was firm, resolute. K'lothar's eyes flickered with amusement. "Very well. The rules are simple. You will face an arena of combat, nothing more than your wits, your technology, and your will to survive. You will be pitted against the Xaran elite in a series of tests. Succeed, and you will have proven your worth. Fail, and you will be relegated to the shadows of history." He turned back to the council, his voice booming as he addressed them. "Let this be a lesson. The galaxy does not have room for polite submission. Only strength, only dominance, will ensure survival." As K'lothar spoke, Rhea's mind raced. She had no illusions about what this was. The Xaran Empire was ruthless, and their elite soldiers were unmatched in combat. But she had to hold her ground. This wasn't just about surviving the test, it was about sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity would no longer cower in the face of those who sought to dominate them. The challenge would be brutal. But Rhea knew that her people had more to offer than just submission. They had resilience, ingenuity, and an unyielding drive to protect their home and their future. "We accept your challenge, Archon," Rhea said again, her voice calm but filled with an unspoken promise. "And we will not fail." K'lothar's smirk returned, but it was tinged with something darker now, uncertainty. He had expected resistance, but not the strength of will she was showing. He hadn't expected humanity to stand up for themselves in this way. He thought them weak, pliable, and easily manipulated. But something had shifted. He had pushed them too far. "Then let the test begin," K'lothar declared, turning to the council. "Prepare for the arena. Let them see what their spirit is truly worth." The council members began to rise, exchanging quiet murmurs as they filed out of the room. But Rhea stayed still, her thoughts sharp and focused. She could hear the pounding of her own heartbeat in her chest, but there was no fear, only determination. This wasn't just a test of humanity's strength. This was a test of their character. Their refusal to be beaten down, to remain quiet, to stay in their polite mode. The time for submission was over. As the council dispersed, Rhea turned to face her team. She didn't need to say anything. They all knew what was at stake. She could see the resolve in their eyes, the same fire that had driven them through the darkest days of Earth's history. They were ready. The atmosphere in the arena was unlike anything Rhea had ever experienced. The vast, spherical space was lined with holographic walls, their translucent surfaces shifting and changing like liquid glass. Above her, the stars of distant galaxies twinkled, mocking the silence of the cold, sterile environment. This was no ordinary arena. It was a manifestation of everything the galaxy had ever thought of humanity, a place where strength was measured, where survival was the ultimate goal. Rhea stood at the center of the arena, her breath steady, every muscle in her body taut with readiness. Around her, a dozen Xaran soldiers stood, their sleek, battle-worn armor gleaming in the artificial light. They were the elite of K'lothar's empire, the best of the best. They moved like a single organism, each one calculating every move of the others, ready to strike without hesitation. But Rhea wasn't alone. Her team, the best of humanity's soldiers, stood with her. They had trained for this moment, though none of them had ever faced a challenge of this magnitude. The Xaran Empire had given them the arena, the rules, and the terms. But they hadn't given them the one thing they truly underestimated, the human spirit. "Captain Munoz!" A voice echoed across the arena. K'lothar's holographic image appeared before them, his smile cold and calculating. "Your test begins now. Prove your species' worth." Rhea's eyes narrowed, her grip tightening around the energy blade she'd chosen for the challenge. The sword hummed with energy, a symbol of humanity's advanced technology, its edge glowing with a fierce light. But she knew this fight wouldn't be won with just weapons. It would be won with strategy, resilience, and the unwavering determination of those who had learned to survive against all odds. "Team, you know the plan," Rhea said, her voice low but steady. "We fight smart. We fight together." Her team responded with a chorus of affirmations, their faces set in grim determination. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for humanity's place in the galaxy, for the right to exist as equals, not subjugates. This was more than just a test. This was their declaration that humanity would no longer hide behind politeness, that they would no longer play the role of the submissive species. The countdown began, and the floor beneath them hummed to life. The walls around the arena flickered, revealing the first challenge. A horde of Xaran drones, mechanized soldiers programmed to fight with precision, emerged from the shadows, their weapons raised, their eyes glowing a deep, unnatural red. They moved like a swarm, each one seeking to disarm, to incapacitate, to destroy. "Incoming!" One of Rhea's soldiers, Lieutenant Zara, shouted. She was the first to react, her rifle raising as she took aim at the advancing drones. The crack of gunfire echoed through the arena, and sparks flew as the energy blasts collided with the drones' armor. But the drones were relentless, closing the distance with frightening speed. "Focus fire on the lead unit," Rhea commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. The team synchronized, their shots taking down the first wave of drones. But more came, faster, more numerous. They were relentless. Rhea could feel the heat of battle rise as the drones closed in. She wasn't concerned about the weapons. It was the Xaran soldiers watching them from the sidelines that made her wary. Every move they made was being analyzed, dissected. This was their final test. Fail, and Earth would lose its place in the galaxy. Her hand gripped the energy blade once more, and with a swift motion, she swung it through the air. The blade cut through the air with a hum, glowing brighter, as it collided with one of the drones. Sparks flew as its metal body crumpled. But there were more, always more. Suddenly, the arena shifted. The walls morphed, revealing a new challenge. A massive, mechanized beast, its body a fusion of metal and flesh, designed for one purpose, destruction. It roared, its red eyes locking on Rhea and her team as it began to charge. "It's a war machine!" Zara shouted, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We can't take the thing down with standard weapons." Then we'll have to use our heads, Rhea said, her voice sharp. Fall back and regroup. The team scattered, moving swiftly as they dodged the creature's swipes, its massive claws tearing through the air. Rhea's mind raced as she calculated their best course of action. The creature's movements were predictable, slow, deliberate, but it was powerful, and it knew no mercy. Flank it from the left, Rhea ordered. She knew they needed to distract it, to get it off balance. The team moved in synchrony, each member executing their roles with precision. Xara and Lieutenant Jonah took the left side, firing stun blasts to slow the creature's advance. Rhea and Sergeant Torres moved to the right, their energy blades raised, ready to strike. As the creature lunged, Rhea saw her opening. She called out to Torres, and together, they dove forward, their blades clashing against the beast's thick, armored hide. Sparks flew, but the creature didn't falter. It swiped at them with a massive claw, sending them both tumbling to the ground. Captain! Torres shouted, but Rhea was already back on her feet, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She wasn't finished yet. With a shout, she lunged once more, this time aiming for the creature's exposed underbelly. Her blade cut through the thick armor, and with a final, decisive strike, the creature fell, its mechanical body twitching and sparking as it collapsed to the ground. The arena went silent for a moment. Rhea stood, panting, her body aching, but her resolve unbroken. This wasn't just about survival. It was about proving something far greater, humanity's strength, their refusal to be dominated. The team regrouped, moving cautiously as the next challenge appeared. But they were ready. The arena had thrown its worst at them, but humanity was still standing. Not just surviving, thriving. As the next wave of Xaran soldiers advanced, Rhea turned to her team. We'll fight until the end. We will not back down. The ground beneath them rumbled, the arena's holographic walls shifting once again. K'lothar voice echoed in the distance, cold and mocking. Impressive. But let's see how you handle the final test. Rhea's heart raced, but there was no fear. There was only resolve. Humanity had just begun to show its true strength, and they would not be stopped.